What if I told you the Smurfs didn't start in their own comic, but crashed into someone else's story by accident? In 1958, in a medieval tale filled with mischief, magic, and music gone wrong, a tiny blue tribe made their first surprise appearance. The comic? Johan and Peewit, the flute with 6 Smurfs. It begins with a castle in chaos, a musician causing mayhem, and a flute so powerful it forces anyone to dance, even kings. And when the flute is stolen by a greedy thief, only one mysterious group can help, the Smurfs. This is where it all began, before the cartoons, the movies, and the merch. This is the birth of the Smurfs. Let's begin Chapter 1. Outside castle, 2 men carry a large wooden log while one remarks about the impending rain, and the other sarcastically responds, clearly not surprised by the news. Inside castle, 2 guards discuss the situation, with one expressing concern that such matters have led to severe consequences in the past, while the other nonchalantly agrees. Nearby, a woman tries to calm a group of crying children, assuring them that everything will settle down soon. The commotion continues to echo through the air. In a bustling kitchen, a frustrated chef laments about his sauce curdling, as a young assistant looks on worriedly amidst the chaos. The kitchen is filled with noise, adding to the confusion of the moment. Nearby, a person in a green coat yells through the noise to an elderly man, suggesting that being deaf might be a blessing. The elderly man, unable to hear clearly, responds with a confused "what," adding to the clamor. Meanwhile, a king and Johan walk through the castle, discussing the merits of the musician who drove away the rats. Johan humorously quips he'd prefer the rats over the relentless noise. As the king and Johan react to the approaching noise, they brace for the musician's energetic presence. The commotion of musical notes fills the air, and Johan winces from the sound. They quickly decide to flee, worried that the musician will want to perform for them. The king expresses his determination to avoid another noisy encounter at all costs. Meanwhile, Peewit happily strums his instrument, creating a lively cacophony of sounds. His carefree demeanor contrasts with the king and advisor's hurried escape. Johan and the king hide behind curtain and cover their ears, trying to block out Peewit's loud and chaotic music. As the music finally stops, Johan lets out a sigh of relief, and the king declares that Peewit is done. Johan and the king walking out from behind curtain and from the noise, appreciating the newfound calm and peace. They express their delight in the quiet atmosphere, feeling refreshed and content. As Johan and the king continue their conversation, Johan notices a merchant nearby and points him out. The king seems intrigued by Johan's remark about nightmares, adding a light-hearted touch to their stroll. The merchant, eager to catch attention, insists he has something special for Peewit and assures it's not expensive. Johan and the king exchange curious glances, intrigued by the merchant's persistence. Johan, accompanied by the king, approaches the merchant to inquire about the item meant for Peewit. The merchant confirms he indeed has something for Peewit, bowing respectfully as he speaks. The king suggests someone fetch Peewit, while Johan curiously asks if the item is edible, hinting at Peewit's interests. The merchant responds with amusement, indicating it's not something to eat and offers to reveal more. With a chuckle, the merchant clarifies that the item is quite indigestible and eagerly prepares to demonstrate its true nature. Johan watches as the merchant moves to reveal the item, intrigued by the mystery. The merchant unveils a collection of gems, proudly declaring them to be both precious and incredibly affordable. Johan seems taken aback by the unexpected revelation, pondering the merchant's enticing offer. The merchant excitedly lists a variety of musical instruments he has, including a mysterious noisy one, capturing Johan and the king's attention with his exuberance. Alarmed, Johan and the king urgently instruct the merchant to hide the instruments, fearing the consequences if Peewit sees them. In a rush, Johan pushes the merchant toward his cart, urging him to leave quickly before Peewit arrives, while the king anxiously hurries him along. Johan thrusts 5 gold pieces into the merchant's hand, urging him to leave immediately for his own safety. The king warns the merchant sternly not to return with his goods, threatening severe consequences if he does. As the merchant hastily departs with his cart, he thinks to himself that Johan and the king have lost their minds. Once the merchant's gone, Peewit eagerly approaches the king, asking about a merchant who supposedly wanted to meet him, while Johan expresses relief. The king looks puzzled, unsure what to say. The king seems not able to say anything as Johan explains that the merchant wanted to compliment Peewit on his music but had to leave hastily. Peewit looks curious, wondering about the merchant's intentions. Peewit, slightly disappointed, shrugs it off and asks the king and Johan for their opinion on his recent music performance. He seems confident as he awaits their feedback. Peewit eagerly explains to the king and Johan how he managed to produce beautiful sounds from his instrument, leaving them curious about his secret. With a cheeky grin, Peewit reveals that he used a silencer. Johan to look amused by hearing what is the secret. Meanwhile the king surprises to see a flute on the ground behind Peewit. The king, still in disbelief, realizes that a flute must have fallen out of the merchant's pocket. Peewit, delighted by the melody that he plays, while the king moves slowly try to grab the flute and hopes Peewit doesn't look back. Suddenly Peewit turn his head facing the king. The king throw himself to the ground with a surprised expression, as Peewit, oblivious, asks for his opinion. Johan rushes over, concerned about the king's fall, while Peewit tries to ask if the king slips, and the king insists he didn't slip. The king insists on staying on the ground, declaring he's quite comfortable, while Johan and Peewit look on with surprise and curiosity. Johan and Peewit exchange puzzled glances, trying to make sense of the king's unusual behavior. Johan questions the king's choice to remain on the cobblestones, but the king responds that he finds it pleasant, much to Johan's disbelief. Peewit seems amused by the king's contentment with the ground. The king contemplates a nap and asks Peewit to fetch a pillow, while Johan quickly offers to go instead. The king, however, insists that his request was specifically for Peewit, leaving Johan slightly frustrated. Peewit questions why the king specifically chose him, and the king humorously insists it's just because he wants it that way, urging Peewit to hurry. Johan stands by, surprised and slightly exasperated by the situation. As Peewit walks away, he worries about the king's odd behavior, thinking he's going loony, while Johan looks at the king who is making faces. Once Peewit is out of sight, the king quickly asks Johan to help him up, revealing he was only pretending to sleep. Johan is puzzled and asks if the king doesn't want to nap anymore. The king, now standing with Johan's help, dismisses Johan's confusion, insisting that this is no place for sleeping. Johan, still perplexed, tries to explain what he just witnessed. The king points out the spot where he was lying, urging Johan to look under where King was lying. Johan notices a flute on the ground, reaching out to pick it up while wondering about its origin. Johan discusses the suspicious flute with the king, who insists it must be destroyed before its Peewit returns. They argue about the best method to dispose of it, with Johan suggesting they burn it to prevent any chance of repair. Agreeing with Johan's plan, the king leads him through the castle courtyard towards his room where a fire awaits. Reaching the warm glow of the fireplace, the king holds out his hand, ready to take the flute from Johan. The flames crackle invitingly, promising to obliterate the mysterious object once and for all. The flute is thrown into the roaring flames, crackling as it burns away, leaving nothing behind but ashes. With a satisfied nod, the king declares the task complete. As the fire settles, Johan and the king hear the sound of a bell ringing loudly, signaling it's time for a meal. Hungry from their excitements, they eagerly decide to head for the dining hall. Just as they are about to leave, Johan spots something in the courtyard and urges the king to come take a look. In the courtyard, Peewit stands on the ground looking frustrated, exclaiming that they're making a fool of him. A little while later, the king emerges from dining area, feeling satisfied and ready for a nap, while Johan looks concerned about a strange smell. Peewit, still looking disgruntled, questions the king's choice to nap on the ground. Suddenly, Johan hears "Brand." He realizes something alarming, and the king to look startled. A man rushes in with urgency, shouting about a fire in the king's room, causing alarm among Johan, Peewit, and the king. Johan, Peewit, and a soldier dash towards the source of the smoke, noting the seriousness of the situation and questioning the unusual green smoke. Amidst the thick smoke, Johan commands to ring the fire bell and start passing buckets of water. Johan, surrounded by smoke, shouts to save the most valuable items as he tries to put out the fire, while Peewit spots a red jug nearby. Peewit, holding the red jug, realizes it's full of delicious wine and seems quite pleased with his discovery amid the chaos. As Peewit are going to pour wine to the fireplace, he muses about the shame of wasting such a delightful breeze. Surrounded by smoke, Peewit gulps down the contents of a large jug, seemingly unconcerned by the fire. With a hiccup, Peewit expresses his dismay at the waste, all while using the jug to spray a powerful stream to douse the flames. As the smoke clears, Peewit triumphantly announces to Johan that the fire is out, while Johan looks relieved holding a small chest. Johan reassures a group of concerned people, including a king, that the fire wasn't serious despite the smoke. They all look relieved yet puzzled as the smoke lingers around them. Johan explains the situation to the king, mentioning that Peewit extinguished the fire with a jug of wine and noting the unusual green smoke. The king listens intently, considering the oddity of the situation. Suddenly Johan and the king hear Peewit scream excitedly. They turn around, both bewildered by Peewit's voice. Peewit excitedly emerges from the king room, holding up a flute he found, surprising Johan and the king. Johan bends down to examine the flute, as Peewit amazed that it was lying between the logs without being burned. The king is equally curious. Peewit questions who could have thrown the flute into the fire, finding it a foolish act. Johan ponders the mystery as they inspect the undamaged whistle. Peewit points out that the flute only has 6 holes, noting it as a strange instrument while the king listens carefully. Peewit looks pleased, ready to demonstrate its use. With confidence, Peewit announces he's going to play something beautiful, asking for silence. The king seems a bit uncertain, while Johan watches curiously. As Peewit plays the flute, an unexpected dark cloud bursts out, knocking Johan and the king backward. Peewit is surprised by the chaotic result of his performance. Peewit nervously tries to explain the unexpected soot explosion to Johan and the king, who are covered in black soot, while they express their frustration. The king looks particularly annoyed as Peewit stammers about the fire's residue. As Peewit clutches the flute, Johan demands the instrument back immediately, clearly upset by the chaos it caused. Peewit running away, avoiding Johan, who demands to return the flute to him. The king, still covered in soot, questions whether the flute is the same one they threw into the fire, expressing his disbelief at its failure. Johan assures him with certainty that it is indeed the same flute. Johan expresses his confusion about how the flute remains unburnt despite being in the fire while they ate. The king seems just as perplexed, acknowledging the strange occurrence. As they walk through the castle, Johan declares his amazement, suggesting it might be black magic, while a passerby looks on curiously. The king seems to agree, though neither fully grasp the mystery. Meanwhile, Peewit is in his room, cheerfully polishing a flute and declaring it clean. Peewit enthusiastically plays his flute, filling the room with lively notes that bounce around energetically. His music seems to inspire him to share it with others. Excitedly, Peewit decides to find someone to listen to his tune and spots the court-marshal nearby. Clutching his flute, he rushes off with a grin, eager to showcase his melody. Peewit approaches the court-marshal, who is slightly preoccupied but willing to listen to a brief tune. The marshal agrees to a short performance, indicating he is in a hurry. Peewit starts playing his flute, and the court-marshal looks surprised, raising an eyebrow. The melody seems to have an unexpected effect, grabbing the marshal's full attention. As Peewit continues his tune, the marshal begins to sway and exclaims, "Well, what do we have here?" His body starts to react involuntarily, moving in rhythm with the music. And so, this chapter comes to a close, but the adventure is far from over. New challenges, strange magic, and Smurf-sized surprises await in the next chapter. A new chapter will be released every day, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay on the journey. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.